What's going on, my fellow freelancers? Your dude Sly here, back at it with another Anthem video for you. And this time we're going to be diving into how abilities will work with an Anthem. There's been a little confusion about this topic, along with combos and loot in general, so I wanted to try and sort things out before the demo drops here in just a few weeks. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how abilities will work with an Anthem, how to access them, find them, and how they differ from other games, what makes an ability a primer or a detonator within the combo system, loot rarity, and much more. So sit back, chillax, and let's do the damn thing. Anthem's abilities are part of the core experience, how you find them, the different versions, how they interact with other abilities, and the different kinds for each Javelin. At first, when Anthem was still quite hush-hush, I really thought the loot chase was going to be all about weapons and armor. Turns out that's not quite how Anthem is going to work. Most games unlock abilities at different levels as you rise throughout the critical path of the game. You start out as this fragile weakling with small abilities in the beginning, and then they get more powerful as you rise in rank. Say for example, first you get access to one ability, then you get access to a grenade, then your double jump, then another ability, so on and so forth until you are a max level beast. Well, Anthem's abilities, or gear as it's called in game, aren't something that you unlock through different levels. The actual slot itself, or the use of that slot, will unlock as you rise up in level, but the abilities themselves in Anthem are actually part of the loot chase itself, meaning that you actually have to go out and find your abilities. They don't simply hand them to you or unlock through XP. Now, I made a video a while ago which listed all of the abilities that we know of so far from each Javelin. Now, it's quite a beast of a video, but going over 5 abilities in each of the 3 slots takes a lot of time. Not to mention when you add in the fact that there are 4 Javelin suits to talk about. So if you are curious about all of the abilities, then definitely check out that video, which I will link at the end of this one. But one thing that caught me by surprise is that your Javelin's abilities are actually part of the loot table. Instead of abilities, it's almost easier to think of them as loot, or gear as they are called in game. Each Javelin has 3 ability slots, 2 offensive and 1 support. Each slot has 5 different pieces of gear that you can choose from, or should I say 5 different pieces of gear that you can go out and find. So just as a quick refresher, let's go over the loot rarity with an Anthem. Once again, these rarities not only count towards weapons, but the actual abilities themselves. Like I mentioned, in Anthem, your abilities are called pieces of gear. You equip 1 piece of gear per ability slot. So there's common, uncommon, rare, and then epic. These are the core rarities throughout most of the game. Now, once you start reaching max level and start getting towards the end game, or elder game as BioWare calls it, there will be 2 additional levels of rarity: Masterwork and Legendary, which is Anthem's version of an exotic. These rarities don't always necessarily relay the power of the gear, well, except for legendary versions, but instead its flexibility and overall use. The actual power of your weapons and gear will be decided by something called a gear score. Now, each piece you equip from your 2 weapons, 3 pieces of gear, and all of your components, they all have a thing called a power level, as you can see here in this picture. Take all of your power levels and combine them for your overall gear score. This is how Anthem gates off higher level content, and it's kind of a good scale, to see where you fit in terms of the game. It's also an indicator of how much damage you dish out and how much damage you can take. For instance, if you see this Colossus here, notice it has a few pieces of epic purple gear. Also 1 rare and 1 common piece. This puts it into the category of a rare Colossus with a gear score of 225. On the flip side, look at this endgame Ranger. It's decked out with all orange Masterwork gear, and it has a score of 433 on the level of a Masterwork Ranger. Now, I know it says Legendary here, but that is a bug. Unfortunately, we don't know much about Anthem's version of exotics legendary gear, but hopefully we'll know more soon. The different rarities of weapons and gear translate to how many extra talents come equipped with that certain ability. The different rarities of weapons and gear translate to how many extra talents come equipped with that certain piece of gear. These are done through random talents or random rolls. In Anthem, they're called inscriptions. Just like you see here, the higher the rarity, the more inscriptions that specific piece will have. Common and uncommon will have 1 inscription, rare has 2, epic 3, masterwork, and legendary rarities come with 4 inscriptions, as well as a few extras that we'll talk about a bit later. Also, a side note here, 4 inscriptions is as high as you can go. Now, one thing to note is that as you get into these higher rarities of loot, new pools of inscriptions will also start opening up. For example, there are certain inscriptions that are only available on masterwork or legendary abilities or gear, and they cannot roll on, say, an epic or rare item. There are also ultra rare inscriptions that will only roll within legendary. I'm not 100% sure how far things go on the flip side, such as if uncommon or common level inscriptions can roll onto a legendary item, but I am assuming that it's going to be possible. This creates more depth, more options, and more chase for the perfect roll. So not only does the number of inscriptions get higher as the loot becomes more rare, but the quality of inscriptions go up as well. Unfortunately, we don't have a complete list of all the inscriptions, and we don't have many examples of the super rare ones either, but there are a few here that we'll go over in a little bit. Having these different pools of inscriptions is going to be pretty awesome during the first couple of weeks, guys. I mean, everyone is going to be trying out all kinds of weird and wild setups, and eventually somebody somewhere will find a powerhouse build with specific inscriptions across multiple slots. That will then become best loadout. This will lead to a loot chase, and in games like Anthem, loot chase is pretty much half the game itself. Alright, Nation, so before we take a look at some examples of gear and gear rarity, now I wanted to mention one more thing. There also seems to be a little bit of confusion about the combo system, which abilities prime the targets, and which abilities detonate to make a combo. Now once I get my hands on a lot more gameplay, I will make this huge combo video, but for now, there is a way you can tell which ability does what for the upcoming demos. If you take a look here at our upcoming example, do you see the little circle next to the firewall mortar? It's a little avatar that shows like small flames. This shows you that this piece of gear is a primer. In this case, it's a fire primer. And if you see a little picture next to its name bar, it'll prime no matter if it's ice, fire, electricity, acid, what have you. Basically, it means that with enough use of this piece of gear, you will apply this status effect to your enemies. And the good thing is about the combo system is that it doesn't matter if the target is primed with fire, ice, acid, or electricity. They can all be detonated by the same abilities. However, in order to detonate these primed targets, you do have to use the right ability or piece of gear. Notice next to the railgun, you see this little explosive looking symbol. It's in the same place that the primer avatar would be. I simply call it the impact symbol, not really sure what it is called in game or officially, but this impact symbol tells you that this piece of gear can be used to detonate a primed target, which then results in a combo. Now you'll know a target is primed by the status effect symbol above the enemy's head. When you see this, you know to switch over to your impact ability and then use that to detonate it. Also, as a side note, each Javelin can detonate combos differently. The Colossus combo does half single target damage and half area of effect damage. The Ranger does huge amounts of single target damage, and the Storm's detonation can chain damage to other enemies in close proximity. So it's good to keep that in mind when creating builds that involve combo damage. Short and sweet, but just remember, you see a little elemental picture next to the name, it's a primer. You see an impact symbol, it's a detonator. Okay guys, so going back to gear, first let's take a look at a few pieces of gear from the Colossus. It's the same thing we were just looking at. It has 3 ability slots like all Javelins, 2 launchers, one ordnance launcher that's mounted on its shoulder or back, the second is the heavy assault launcher which is on its wrist or forearm, and then the third slot is a support slot. In each ability slot you can equip one piece of gear, things I've been calling abilities, 1 piece out of 5 total. As you can see, we are currently looking at the Colossus's heavy assault launcher menu. Inside of this menu, there are 4 pieces of gear that he picked up from the wild. And like I mentioned, you find these things out in the open world, or during missions, or just simply playing the game. They are not unlocked by reaching a certain level. So if you look, you see that the Colossus currently has a blue rare flamethrower equipped. It has a power of 32. That power level is what determines your overall gear score. But also notice at what we're currently previewing on the left, a railgun, which is another ability or gear piece you can equip within the heavy assault launcher. This railgun is a common rarity with a power of 18, but more so than that, take a look at the bottom. You see that the railgun only has 1 inscription while the flamethrower has 2. So that's really the major differences between rarities, the number of inscriptions and the quality of inscriptions therein. So there will be times when 1 awesome inscription might be a better choice than 2 crappy inscriptions, even though the gear piece with 2 inscriptions is a few power levels higher. Of course, you can find the railgun or flamethrower in all of the rarities, uncommon, common, rare, epic, or the 2 special ones. The drawback to all of this, however, our good old friend Mr. RNG. Now sometimes RNG is my homie, other times I swear the dude hates me. However, this is the we'll talk about this later part of the video. And that, my friends, crafting. Even though Anthem is unique in that you have to go out and find all of your abilities and gear and equip them instead of learning them, there is a backup plan if you get screwed over by RNG, and that's crafting. The world of Anthem has a lot of crafting components that you can pick up. From finding discarded javelins out in free play to alien plants and even veins of ore or crystals. You can collect all of this stuff and attempt to create your own abilities or pieces of gear instead of trying to find them. This is also how you can sort of re-roll your gear. If you have a favorite ability, let's say the railgun, but your inscriptions suck or they don't match your build, then it will be worth your while to try and seek out the blueprint for the railgun. This will let you craft it until you have the best roll possible. However, each piece of gear has its own blueprint. Now in the live stream, Ben Irving called it recipes, but I hope on Casey Hudson's majestic smile that they are not called recipes in game. On top of crafting, certain side missions, quests, contracts, or campaign missions will drop guaranteed rewards, and blueprints can be one of them. So when you accept it at the start, you will know what you're getting and what your reward will be. Everything else that drops within is just a little something extra. Recipes. Alright guys, finally let's talk about the top 2 tiers of gear and weapons, Masterworks and Legendary. By the way, weapons, they work exactly like, gear for your ability slots. You have to find and create them as well. Anyways, moving on here, like I said, the more rare an item, the more inscriptions there are. That is until you get to Masterwork and Legendary, where they cap out with 4 inscriptions. But on top of that, weapons and gear start getting named, and if it's worth naming, then you know it has to be good. Masterwork level gear comes with 4 inscriptions plus a unique intrinsic perk, depending on the gear itself. Now, even though Masterwork pieces of gear are special, they are all simply upgraded versions of the same gear you can equip in the lower 4 tiers. For example, on this Ranger, one of its ability slots is completely dedicated to grenades. Frag Grenade is one such ability or piece of gear that you can find out in the wild. This piece of gear is also a Frag Grenade, but it's a Masterworked named version called Last Argument. Now this is from one of the BioWare streams, and the numbers are either bugged or purposefully changed, so don't take these numbers here literally, but it does give you an idea of how things work. So as you can see, it comes with 4 inscriptions since it's such a high rarity item, but its unique intrinsic ability, or Masterwork perk, is that it adds a certain percentage charge back to your ultimate bar when you get a multi-kill of 2 or more enemies. Now it's obviously not going to be 1000%, but anytime you see Last Argument, this intrinsic ability will not change. It will always be, charging back your ultimate when landing multi-kills. However, the inscriptions can and will change, so if you're looking for an extremely fast ultimate recharge build, then you would want this to be a part of it. Also, inscriptions like, say for example, double ultimate recharge for grenade kills or faster ultimate charge while hovering, stuff like this will be key to making your perfect setup. So the more you craft, the more items you go out and find of the same version, the better your chances for finding the best inscriptions possible. Another intrinsic Masterwork perk we can look at is also for the Ranger's Assault Rifle. Blast Missile is one of the pieces of gear available in this slot, and Argos Mace is a Masterwork version of Blast Missile. On top of 4 inscriptions, it detonates an electric explosion when defeating an enemy, which is pretty cool. But also, one thing here that it doesn't do is it doesn't use any kind of combo situations. It's not a detonator, nor is it a primer, and you can tell that by the name bar. As you can see, there is no avatar here, so it's just simply an ability you use for damage. Moving over to one of my favorite slots on the Javelin, and one thing I'm most excited about, however it hasn't really been talked about all that much, it's a special slot, and also the way you can deeply customize your Javelin. It's a thing called a component. Kind of think of components like mod slots. These components can drastically change your Javelin, and even though inscriptions are bugged, you can see what I mean right here. Combined Arms gives you a 50% damage increase to your left bumper ability if you defeat an enemy with your right bumper ability. Or this one here restores your shields to 100% when you perform a multi-kill of at least 3 enemies. This is one area I am really excited to dive into and explore in a lot more detail. Now they didn't talk about it in a lot of detail here either, but when you start leveling up, you slowly start unlocking more things for your suit. Since pieces of gear are things you find out in the open world and not abilities that unlock at certain levels, these component slots kind of take their place. If I freeze frame it right here, you can see that there are 6 component slots in total, and I'm sure these unlock slowly throughout your rise to max level, but 6 component slots, each with their own set of inscriptions, that is a ton of customizing. Unfortunately, we don't have any legendary examples here, well, except for Jera's Wrath, but what is this, 2017? Anyways, once you start thinking about it, you realize that just how customizable Javelins can be. Towards the end game, we're going to have 4 inscriptions over 3 ability slots, 2 weapons, each with 4 inscriptions, and up to 6 components, and all of them have their own inscriptions as well, which also further customizes your suit on top of that. And this is just what we know about. It doesn't include other intrinsic perks that come with masterwork or legendary gear. Guys, that is a ton of customizing, and I can't wait to dive into it. But that's about it, freelancers. I made a video like this when the stream first launched, but I never finished it due to having PC props. And I started seeing more and more questions about abilities and combos that I thought this would be a good time to bring it back. So there you have it. I'm excited to see what legendary items we can get our hands on, not to mention all the other masterworked items that are going to be out there. All of our questions will soon be answered in just a few short weeks when the upcoming demo drops. So stay hyped, my friends. Our time is almost here. But for now, that is about it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope that this helps you sort out abilities if you were wondering about them. And before I go, guys, I just want to thank each and every one of you, the Anthem community as a whole, as I've been getting a ton of support here recently. So much so that I have been invited to become an EA game changer, which is a freaking huge opportunity for someone like me with such a small or medium-sized channel. I really couldn't believe it when I read the email. So thank you guys so much, y'all. Seriously, this is a big deal to me, and BioWare, especially Mass Effect, is the reason why I am a gamer to begin with. So I am incredibly excited for the future, and 2019 has already been amazing so far, and that's because all of you. So thank you guys so much. I'll be planning a giveaway here soon as my way of saying thank you, so keep those eyes open for that as it'll be coming up here pretty soon. But I am out, y'all. Thank you guys so much for watching and for supporting Sly Nation. If you're new to the channel, then welcome, my friend. Glad you made it here and hope that you stick around for the future. Feel free to check me out on Twitter or Facebook at Sly Nation or Sly Nation Gaming on the FB. Subscribe for lots more Anthem, Destiny, and Division 2 videos. Spank the thumbs up, but only if you enjoyed yourself. And comment down below if you're just as excited as I am, or if you're worried that it might be another mess up. Take care, y'all, and keep those eyes open for more vids coming out soon. But until then, this is your dude Sly, and I'll catch you all next time.